war should be terrible. You know, like we spend our days living in comfort. Like right now, I'm laying on a large couch with an adorable little doggy that is having the best time of his life right now. And there are our men and women, our servicemen and women, are in another country fighting a war of ideology, a war of profit, a war of attrition in some cases. But Canadians don't know about what's going on there. Some do, you know, others don't. Most Canadians don't. Most Americans don't know what veterans have gone through with the Iraqi war, the Afghan war. They have an idea of it. During World War II, it was we suffered. Everybody suffered together. Now, you know, people care more about Justin Bieber and what are they going to get for Christmas? You know, oh no, I got an iPhone that's white instead of black. While people live and die, fighting conflicts. And it's all because we no longer have an ability to have a horrible war. We don't know what suffering is as individuals. We don't know what it's like to have to give up and surrender your freedoms to go and fight an idea.
Not just freedoms, but your luxuries, your resources, your time.
And, you know, look at America, look at the debt. You know, trillions of dollars of debt. All because Americans didn't want to sacrifice their comfort for a war started by their president at the time. For what reason? You know, to what end? You know, was it revenge for trying to assassinate Daddy? You know, it's for oil. You know, it's for power. Some claim it's a war on Islam. But Americans don't sacrifice, so their debt's huge. It's massive. Like trillions and trillions of dollars is spent fighting a war that most Americans will never even know or care about. It doesn't make any sense. They should have sacrificed. The individual should sacrifice. People should sacrifice when you fight a war. And if you don't have that sacrifice, then war becomes a game. It becomes completely amoral. You know, during World War II, we knew who our enemies were. We bombed the hell out of cities and killed thousands and hundreds of thousands of civilians. Over 50 million people died during World War II. And that should have ended war. That should have ended large-scale, massive conflicts where millions died, but it didn't because of the nuclear bomb, because now the big powers of the world could no longer wage war like that. And he thought maybe that's a good thing. But now, because of modern conveniences and the fact that the individuals don't want to lose out on those conveniences and don't want to sacrifice, we now have massive debts. We have half the world hating us, the other half hating each other, all fighting over resources and power and money.
And the population is completely complacent and ambivalent and even unaware.
Exactly.
They just forget. Like, we forget. I forget that we're at war.
Yeah, we forget.
We're at war. And, like, nothing's changed from years ago when we weren't at war. I still live exactly the same way.
Exactly, and we haven't sacrificed. And people are just unaware. Like, we don't know. We just don't know what it's like. And I'm not saying we should know what it's like. In fact, I don't think anybody should know what it's like. We should not know what war is like. But there's conflicts around the world, and you know, millions of people are suffering, and we don't know. We don't know what's really happening because we don't sacrifice. We don't make the effort to go and learn and see what it's like to go and live in these kinds of places and face these conflicts. And how can we help? How can we sacrifice? You know, should we sacrifice? That's a good question. Like, can we sacrifice? Should we sacrifice? Is that a valid thing? You know, we don't want to sacrifice. Maybe I don't want to lose out on my comforts. Maybe I like my tea and my little doggy. You know, he's cute.
But because you don't actually have to face that choice, we don't actually have to face that choice, then don't feel the urge to go and protest and get our governments to change this. I mean, we're supposed to live in a democracy. Really, we're not. It's just the few who have the power who make all these major decisions, and the rest of us are not even educated enough to be aware of it half the time.
Yeah, and those that, you know, but war should, if we're going to go to war, we need to all learn to sacrifice. And our government should have imposed tax levies, should have maybe even brought about the conscription, so that we as a group of people can come together and say, whoa, hold on, I don't like this. And we can end the war right then and there. But without that sacrifice, we don't know what the hell's going on. And people just dying far off in another land somewhere for no reason. And we don't know about it. We don't even know why. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. You have anything you want to interject?
A lot of it has to do with the media as well, and I think capitalism too, because once capitalism gets going, it's always selling products, always keeping the public entertained, and
yeah, like,
and so
right.
so much coverage from the media goes to that, goes towards, like you said, Justin Bieber and celebrity hairstyles, and that's what people are used to, and so 70% of the media is dedicated to that, and you have to work hard to actually find some information on current wars and politics and what's happening in other countries.
Yeah, that's right.
And then to add to that, the government mandate to instill, especially in America, fear into the population and separate them from the other, so anyone outside their community and their way of life as someone completely different, where they don't even perceive them as an equal human being who should have the exact same comforts and freedoms as they have.
Yeah.
And so they don't feel guilty about going into other countries and messing with their way of life, because they're completely different to them. When they're not, we're all human beings, we're all sharing the same earth.
That's right. That's right, you're right. And part of media, because I come from an advertising background, is it really is, it's a handshake between the people and the media. I want to be sold products that will make my life easier. So I'm going to shake your hand, Mr. Media. Mr. Media, or advertisers, or the news come in. Okay, well, I'm going to feed you information and feed you products that will make you happy. And that it becomes a catch-22, a loop onto itself. So us, the people, are just as responsible as the media, because the media is dictated by us, the people. And it sells us ideas, and if we buy into it, it's our fault for buying into that idea. And we need to take responsibility for ourselves. And so when we're being sold ideas that are bullshit, we're being sold ideas that are lies, and we're being sold products that service us only, to further our own levels of comfort while sacrificing the lives of others, well, that's bullshit. That's a lie. And then we should stand up and say, hey, I don't want to purchase this product. I don't want to listen to this message. I want a better message. I want an honest message. When they say, if it bleeds, it leads. Sex sells. These are just catchphrases, but they're referring to the fact that we don't want to be inundated with thinking. It's scary for most people. Think of it. How often does any one individual make a contributed difference to anything in the world? Most of the time, we see a celebrity, we go, oh my God, take a lot of pictures, and then we go back to our lives, because it's easy. That's simple. And that's okay. That's the life you chose. You want to live that life. That's fantastic. You're happy. I'm happy. You're happy. But the problem with that is that you become part of the problem with the fact that you're being fed messages that are not always truthful, and you're not always being given an honest message, because you don't want to hear it. Because honestly, do you really want to hear about all the horrible things in the world? Probably not. Do you want to sacrifice your money and time to help people? Most definitely not. A lot of us are kind and generous, and we donate money, and we want to volunteer sometimes, but do we really sacrifice? Of course not. We've built an infrastructure, so we don't have to sacrifice. But if we're going to go into conflicts in other countries around the world, or we're going to feel that we need to tell other people how to think and be, we need to understand them first before we can go in then and tell them, hey, maybe we have a better way, because maybe our way is not better. And the lies that our media feeds us is really only to sell things, to sell products, to sell ideas. And again, that's not a bad thing, but you have to be smart enough to read through what lies you're hearing, and be able to filter out the bullshit from the reality. You know, the evening news, they show in that 1 hour time maybe 8 or 9 stories about various social, political events happening around the world, but it doesn't tell you all the stories, nor can they tell you all the stories, because there's not enough time in the world. It's up to you as individuals to actually make the effort to go and learn more about what they're talking about. And if they're lying or if they're giving you the wrong information, it's up to us as individuals to stand up and say, hey, that's wrong. And just like what I said about war, you know, we as individuals need to be able to stand up to our government and say, hey, we don't like that, but we need to know why. We need to educate ourselves to why. Because if we're not educated, or we're educated with the wrong information, like conspiracies and fringe ideas, we just do the whole society a disservice. We become dishonest to ourselves, and we sell ourselves lies. Remember, propaganda, conspiracy theories, if you're not skeptical of that information, you're part of the problem. And you have to be skeptical, you have to question, and you also have to question the questions. Because sometimes what you think of as being an argument against government or an argument against, let's say, 9/11 and saying it's a big conspiracy, well, you need to question that too. Because somebody's selling you an idea that may or may not be real, may or may not be valid. It might be a lie, or it could be a twisting of facts. Well, you have to be able to stand up and say, hey, you know, I don't believe that. And so that means you have to be an active participant in everything that you do. And if you don't, well, don't complain when you don't like something. Right? I don't know. Am I ranting there now? I don't know what the hell I'm saying anymore. I have a dog licking my neck.
We don't have a central thesis that we're trying to get across. We're kind of just covering a whole bunch of topics.
We're just randomly yammering on about stuff, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes just having conversations, you know what I mean? Sometimes just kind of, and having a dog lick your ear is the best way of getting across ideas. I don't know, I just find that for every one person that's educated and kind of realizes, hey, you know, things aren't as they seem, there's about a dozen other people that say this exact same thing, but they have absolutely no idea why. And they make up these wild ideas. You see, you get people like Alex Jones, you know, cuckoos, or David Icke, or similar people who make up these wild theories about clockwork elves, and you know, Illuminati and shape-shifting reptiles and chemtrails, and you think that because they're going as a counterculture to the establishment that they have to be right, and that's a prevalent. What's the pronunciation of that? Prevalent mental illness within human society. And it's always existed that if you have somebody in power and you introduce a counterculture to that power, that becomes an accepted truth. Whether or not it is really truthful or not is up in the air. You know, the Roman Empire existed, Christianity started existing, Christianity became the counterculture, it became the accepted way, and then, you know, Christianity now flourishes around the world. Islam, same way, was a counterculture to the current ideals at the time. It was extremely violent and swept in, and it no longer became the counterculture, it became the power, and the counterculture to Islam became divisive secular groups throughout history, and there's always a counterculture to something. But if that counterculture is uneducated and it is full of a lot of bullshit, like most conspiracy theories tend to be, again, you're, like I said before, you're doing the world a disservice because you're ill-educated. It's the real issues at hand. That's right. Educate yourself, but you know what? That's part of being at war. The main thesis is educate yourself, but be smart about where you get your information from. What it should be is, on one hand, you should be looking at people's philosophies and the way people think through art and literature. Look at the great writers of the past. Look at their philosophies, because their ideas still manifest themselves today. from Locke to Vonnegut, right, to Hitchens, to Voltaire, great thinkers and people who went against the counterculture, but did so in an educated manner, did so in a way that didn't accept it as just a counterculture, but introduced a new way of thinking. And it's an education. And on the other hand, you need to educate yourself with science. And that is so important. I cannot stress this enough, because the basics of science, science isn't a thing. It's a tool. It's a process. The basics of science is stating that you have an idea. Well, to make that idea or a hypothesis or a theory come to fruition, you need information. You need to prove it through fact. And you need to go through something called the scientific method. It's a very simple idea that if you have an idea, you prove it. And then when you prove it, you got to prove your proofs. And then once you've proven your proofs and other people have further proven those proofs, then you actually have a working theory, a valid theory. And that's what science gives us, is that it teaches us to be skeptical. It teaches us to use logic and reason to form ideas that then can become philosophies and can manifest themselves as art and literature. And that's how religion used to do it. They would say, this is our idea, come up with some cool stuff to go with it. Make a Sistine Chapel, make a concerto. Now we have science that replaced religion. Now let's come up with cool ideas and philosophies and arts that fit in with science and reason. And it's not impossible. That's kind of the next, I think that's kind of the next step, the next evolution. And we're seeing that now with the rise in the number of non-believers around the world, the rise of the rejection of organized religion, and the acceptance of humanism, where we exist as travelers on this great spaceship called Earth. And we're all kind of in it together. Some of us are engineers, some of us are pilots, some of us are sweepers and cooks and cleaners and thinkers and drawers and painters and taking carers of childreners. But we all are kind of doing this together, just like what you said before, that we're all kind of here together. I'm not advocating that we destroy all our borders and we all hug each other in this great, wonderful orgy of humanity. I'm saying that we should at least have some common decency and common sense and educate ourselves when it comes to how we treat each other. And maybe, instead of complaining about Israel, we can help find a solution to help those poor people. Because both sides are in conflict, both sides suffer. The Israelis and the Palestinians. Maybe we can find comfort and help the people in Darfur who are suffering at the hands of Islamic extremists. Maybe we can help the Islamic extremists find happiness and love a Jew. And maybe a Jew love a Muslim. Or maybe them reject religion completely and start loving each other and not care if somebody's gay or straight or a little cute doggy or not. And maybe,
Are you advocating bestiality now?
No, I'm not advocating bestiality. I am advocating hugging a cute dog and not hating them because they're too cute. I'm advocating that humans just have a little common decency. And you know what? There is a philosophical thought found in religion. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I think that's a very decent thing to say, is that don't be an asshole. Treat people with a little common courtesy, and everything else will become easy. Don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, don't murder. Very basic common sense ideas. Whether Christianity thinks that they own the rights to those lines, or Judaism or Islam, or Hinduism or Buddhism, the origins are just based on our common sense. Because when an ant can have a moral structure. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. When an ant can have a moral structure, and a chimpanzee can have an organized governmental hierarchy within the troop, and lions and tigers and bears can all have different forms of acceptable actions onto each other, that's morality. If animals can have morality, humans can have morality because we're animals. So educate yourself, don't be an asshole, and hug cute dogs. And I think that's about it.
Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah. Yippee-ki-yay.